So when we left off, the leukemia had gone into remission. And I already told you it didn't stay that way. So while the leukemia was on hiatus, I started looking into finally going back to college. I had trouble finding schools that would accept references from doctors and social workers because I didn't have teachers and employers that could write them. Unity didn't care. They were really understanding about my situation. And they weren't too far from here. They're about 2.5 hours. They also have a very different sort of orientation. I could have gotten a medical waiver for this, but I wanted to try. What they have is different kinds and different levels of difficulty of what are essentially week-long camping trips with small groups of incoming students. Mine was an Acadia National Park base camp, meaning sleeping in tents on a campground that had flush toilets and showers. Now, this was a week-long program. We left on Saturday, came back Friday. I had literally the day before we left, a checkup. If they had drawn blood that day, I never would have gone on the trip. I can guarantee it. Because by Tuesday, I knew I had relapsed. I had petechia. I had bruises. Big, unexplained ones that, since this is the middle of summer, everyone can see. Our group leaders can see them. I did not lie when I told them that I know what's wrong, don't worry about it, because I did know what was wrong, and that waiting until going home on Friday wasn't going to be a problem. I also knew I was likely to not get out much for the next few months or years, so I kept what it was to myself. So I stuck the week out, and as soon as I got home on Friday, and at this point it's 4 o'clock and her office is closing in a half hour, and it's more than a half-hour drive away from me. But I call my hematologist and tell her that, yeah, I've got petechia, because that's all it takes. I made sure to wear shorts and a tank top so that she could see the extent of the bruises without me having to strip down. And I went straight from her office to the hospital, which is what I expected to happen. So treatment starts here in Maine, because before anything else can be done, they still have to get it back into remission. So more chemo, which doesn't work. So I get sent down to Boston, where I'm going to eventually need to be anyway, for chemo there, a different kind of chemo, and more direct interaction with the doctors that will be involved for what comes next. Eventually, the window of remission does happen, but we're also dealing with other issues at this point, fundamental problems with our healthcare system. Now, it's called a bone marrow transplant because that's the way it behaves, and it probably relates to how they used to harvest. But the way it's delivered, it can be described pretty well as a stem cell transfusion, which is also an accurate description for it. Now, to prep you for this, once you're in remission, there's more chemo and total body irradiation to make sure they kill every single shred of an immune system and any functional cell in your bone marrow that you've got. They've got to kill it all. Otherwise, the transplant rejection is guaranteed to kill you. So the radiation has had some fun long-term side effects, and I do have chronic graft versus host. I am literally allergic to myself. Now, like I said, it could be worse. It could have just killed me. But it does significantly contribute to my disability and my lack of mobility. So they find me a donor that matches the 6 alleles they test for. Blood type isn't one of those. So they didn't find a donor for me in this country. They had to import one. Well, import their donation from Germany. Now, what this bone marrow transplant does, this establishes someone else's stem cells in my body, and those cells are the source of the blood in my body, my immune system. My blood type changed. That was interesting. Didn't know that would happen. I used to be O positive. I think I'm B something now. I actually haven't needed a transfusion since my blood type changed. But that's one of the really cool science bits, is that my blood type changed. Measuring the conversion in my system from me to not me is actually called a chimerism score, because I'm medically a chimera. And both my science geek and gamer geek think that's pretty cool too. Not the side effects, just the concept. But it gives you a brand new, like newborn, brand new, literally starting from scratch, immune system. I've had to do the new rounds of immunizations on the same schedule that newborns and very young children have to go through. I had to get some of those waived when I finally did go back to school, because it hadn't been quite 2 years when the school year started. I had to delay my entry to Unity for 2 years because I was not allowed to be in public at all before then, partially because of the lack of immunizations and immune system. I was still on immunosuppressants when I went to Unity. I don't think I got off of all of them until my second year. I used to wear surgical masks to school, or at least have them with me, but I made it work. So we've gotten me into remission and into school, and I think that's a good place to leave it for the moment.